Welcome back to the Self-Esteem and Confidence Mindset podcast with me, Johnny Pardo. Today, I welcome a special guest on the episode. I welcome Katie, where we're going to be talking about self-confidence, happiness, and many, many more things. So I'm just going to do a quick introduction to Katie, and then we're going to go into the conversation today. So Katie is the host of Everyday Happiness, the daily micro podcast, a happiness expert, kindness crusader, speaker, and author. She fundamentally believes we deserve to make time for our priorities. As a happiness curator, Katie distills happiness science into bite-sized nuggets for her audience. She's obsessed with the idea that kindness is contagious and spreading kindness. Katie is especially fond of kindness cards, her brand of happy mail. So, Katie, really great to hear some of the work you're doing, and that's definitely important in this day and age to try and keep our levels of happiness up and kindness as much as we can. So just tell us a little bit about actually what got you into this area and why you decided to focus so much on helping people with happiness and kindness, and maybe a little bit about your journey to this.
Yeah, what's so interesting is that I just accidentally fell right into this. It was not something that I had been thinking about or something that I was super inspired about for a long, long, long time. So I grew up in a town of 2006 people in the middle of a cornfield in Minnesota, which is basically the middle north section of the United States for all of your UK friends and followers. And I knew that's not where I wanted to be. So I decided that I would be a lawyer to get out of this. Like that was the only way I could think to get out of this, small town. I didn't feel right. And I knew I didn't want to be a doctor because I didn't want to like touch people and have, like deal with blood. I was 7 years old when I decided. And then when I decided at 7, it was a straight and narrow path to law school, which led me to a large law firm in Washington, D.C., which is on the East Coast of the U.S., in a large city where I practiced federal court trial litigation, which is basically on all the time, working 24/7, the craziest job, doing lots of stuff, standing up in front of courtrooms and barristers, arguing about all the things, which is not happy, believe it or not. And I stopped practicing law when I had kids. And then we all remember in early 2020, this thing called the global pandemic. And I've always been a half glass full. I've always been the silver lining type of person. It's just who I am. But what I found during those early months of the global pandemic, starting in around March of 2020, I was doom scrolling social media. I was on Facebook, just scrolling, being like, what's happening in the world? I was glued to the television, watching every daily press conference. Everything felt so out of control. I don't know how you felt or how things evolved specifically in the UK, but here in the US, it felt like a dumpster fire and there was no control. And what that did to me was just raise my anxiety level to something that was almost unmanageable. I was so scared to get COVID because I didn't know what it was. The unknowing was what just kept me in this doom scroll, thinking that if I just learned more, I would know more. I could better protect my little kids, better protect my family, right? And after a few months, like really a few dark months of this space, which is not my typical personality, I decided that there was something I needed to change. And what I did was start to research happiness. And what I found was that there is a part of happiness scientifically that is within our control. So I love proof. Like I said, I'm a lawyer, right? So I couldn't just like assume that I was going to be happy because, there's rainbows and sunshine and butterflies. All those things are amazing, but those are not going to get you to the happiness that you desire. So I wanted the proof. So I started digging in on the science, listening to podcasts that were devoted to the science community, researching, reading journal articles, taking classes on happiness. And then I started telling my friends, like we all do, right? We talk to our friends. We're like, you wouldn't believe what I learned. And I heard this and this little thing and that little thing. And they were all these 2-minute sound bites of like, we could all do this. And I was getting so excited. And my girlfriend said, it's time for you to start a podcast and make it short and make it daily because habits matter. And we need a bright light in this time when it feels so dark. And so in June-ish of 2020, Everyday Happiness was born. And now it not only helps me every day because I have to write the content, right? So it's good for me, but hopefully it helps others in 2 or 3 minutes a day. And that is the long story of how all of this came to be.
Love it. Love that you were researching and looking. And I think I just remember something I think Jim Rohn said, and it was, if you want to, you want to be rich, like study rich people. You want to be happy, study happy people, study happiness, keep studying it. And that sounds like that's what you certainly did. And then you went out and shared it. And I also love what you said about you have to write the content. So therefore it allows you to feel good as well as sharing it with other people. So that's awesome. And just with like focusing on it and being able to like live it now, that's awesome. So for the individual perhaps who's very much in a place right now and it's maybe they're really low, and whether it's like stress, whether it's like really down, whether it's really anxious, whether it's a combination of all of them, and they're like, I don't know what I want, I don't feel good about life. Is there any kind of guidance you would give that individual?
Yeah, well, that's a loaded question, right? So part of it is I am not trained in therapy or psychology or all of the things that really help people. But if you were one of my girlfriends and we were sitting on the sofa and we were just talking about, a bad day or a bad season, not necessarily like some other deeper emotional, mental health issues.
No.
I would say it's a season and this too shall pass, right? Like we can start to see that we can pivot, that these darker times don't last forever, right? So we try to explore that. And I truly believe that it's really our responsibility as humans to find happiness wherever we can. And that doesn't decrease the compassion for what's happening in the world around us. So the world can be a dumpster fire. We can be personally feeling grief. There could be global warming. There could be children that don't have sufficient food, right? There's lots of bad things happening all the time. Politics, that can really engulf someone's media and like their space. But that doesn't mean that just because we want to look for that silver lining or look for that happiness, it doesn't decrease the compassion and the empathy we have for all of that. And I think sometimes we get confused and we think, well, everything is so bad. How could I possibly have a good day? So therefore I won't. But the fact is we owe it to ourselves and we owe it to the people around us to continue to look on the brighter side, if you will. And knowing that it doesn't decrease any of the compassion and empathy for the other bad things. Like we get to have both. It's not a pie where you only get a certain amount. It's infinite. We get to have all of that. And I think that's really, empowering for someone that's like feeling the heaviness of whatever's happening in their world, the circumstances probably.
Do you think there's an expectation that sometimes put out there that the aim is to be, maybe there's like a misinterpret or kind of a perception that we should be happy all the time. Do you think that gets thrown out a little bit, or people try to achieve for that sometimes and they get,
Yeah, and they get caught up, right? So that absolutely happens. It happens in lots of things. Happiness is just one of the many ways, right? That this happens. It's this idea that you are looking for the next best thing, or the next thing is right on the other side of the coin, or it's when I get the bigger house, I will be happy, or when I get the new car, I will be happy, or I will be more satisfied. But what happens is the new car smell wears off and you're back to your set point. And what that's called scientifically is hedonic adaptation. It's this hedonic treadmill. It's the way that our brains process what we have and always wanting more. It's the satisfaction that is always elusive. And that's part of this happiness equation. So really quick, I'm going to back up and I want to just help your listeners understand the definition of happiness and how much is in our control.
Yeah, that'd
because
be great.
Sometimes I think we forget and we think it's just finding the great parking spot or getting an A on a test or drinking your favorite, coffee from the barista, but that's not always the way it is. So two things. The first concept is that happiness is 50% genetic, 25% circumstantial, and 25% of what's in your control. Okay, so our genetics play a big part in our happiness, our set point, whatever that looks like. And look, we're humans. We all have different DNA. It could be 49. It could be 51. These are averages. This is not finite. And I'm not a scientist. I did not make this stuff up. This is what the actual real scientists will tell you. And so 25% is circumstantial. Now, circumstances differ for everyone. So circumstantial can look like extreme poverty, but that doesn't mean that they're not happy. Because you go to places in India, for example, there's studies done in villages in India, and they don't have the same kind of means as maybe we would in the UK or the US or some other parts of the world, yet they're just as happy. So it's not necessarily circumstantial and money and that kind of stuff, but it's just generally like you stubbed your toe, right? That you feel like, you don't feel like that was great, right? You have that like feeling, which we all have. We're complex humans. And then the 25% is what's in your control. And that is really where the magic is. And that's really where I spend most of my time in my research, because that 25% can really make a big impact in how you feel. So happiness, the second part is this. Happiness, the definition, most researchers will agree that it's a two-pronged definition, which I think is so fascinating, right? So we have the 25% that's in your control, but then what do we do about it? So we have the happiness prong one, which is your emotions. It's the way that you feel, the way that you experience joy and contentment and positive well-being, combined with the sense of everything is good, meaningful, worthwhile, right? Those emotions stem from positive experiences. And that's the first prong of happiness. But the exciting part is the second prong. And this is where the fulfillment comes in. And this is purpose and satisfaction. Purpose and satisfaction. So purpose is how you feel when you're doing the thing you love. This can be academic research, your work, building a business, knitting, being involved in the community, being a parent, right? So many things. Purpose. It's this long-lasting happiness that comes from mostly, human connection. There's usually a human connection aspect to this. And it's clear that a productive human endeavor creates purpose, right? So purpose. And then the next part of that is satisfaction. And this is simple. And it's still so hard for so many of us. And it's what you mentioned earlier, which got me thinking about mentioning this to you now. It's that satisfaction is what you have more than what you want. So it's appreciating what we have more than pining for what we want. So like we just talked about, many of us will feel like we're more satisfied, happier even, if we have more of what we want. However, that hedonic adaptation theory says, that's not how this works. It's delusional. Our brains are playing tricks on us. It's impossible to get more and be happier long term. Satisfaction never works that way, ever. So that is like, in a nutshell, all of the happiness science.
Oh, wow. Yeah, love what you said about both purpose and satisfaction, and then what not wanting to get, also what you touched on about wanting to get to a point before hitting the happiness, and actually living it like day by day or as possible. So how would you, like, rather than getting to a certain point, because I know I've been guilty of this, certainly like through my life, of being like, when I get to, I will be happy.
Oh yeah.
How can people get more, because it might be quite hard for someone to do, but how can people get more into day by day to get happiness in their everyday? Is it living more of their passion?
Yeah, it can be so many things that will just give you that boost of happiness, that serotonin, that dopamine, like all of those good chemicals that happen when we get those boosts that we can't control, right? Like I can't control that in my body. It just happens or it doesn't. Obviously, I would say being kind is one of the best ways, because when you are kind, especially to a stranger, to someone, or you show appreciation. Just yesterday, I told someone how much I appreciated something that they had done for me. They kind of went out of their way to do something nice for me. And I saw them and I just was like, I just really want you to know how much I appreciated that and how it made me feel so warm and loved, and, you know, this friendship and all that. And it made me feel good and it made them feel good, right? So kindness, acts of kindness, however that looks, is always a good way. I have a blog post. I will share it in the show notes, link to it. It was in January 2023, but it's called The Happiness Soup and has lots of ideas about how to create your own recipe for happiness. Because this is where I think we get caught up. You know, we think about like gratitude. How many times do we hear, just if you're grateful, you will have more gratitude, therefore you will be happier. But that's not how it works. If I have to write in a gratitude journal, I kind of want to poke my eyes out. That's not what works for me.
I love it.
And that's okay. Right?
Yeah.
So I have all kinds of ways that you can practice gratitude that have nothing to do with writing in a gratitude journal, because maybe that's not what works for you. That's totally fine. Maybe you just think of 2 things you appreciate when you're brushing your teeth in the morning. Call it a day. Like, this doesn't have to be hard, you know? And it's not one size fits all. So if you ever hear someone say, well, this is the roadmap to getting happier, or these are the 7 things that are going to make you happier, they're lying. They're lying. That's not how it works. We're all individual humans. Like that would be crazy. That's not how it works. Just like the morning routine that celebrity ABC does never works for every single person. I mean, how many morning routines have we tried that didn't work? Because they just don't always work for everyone. You have to pick what works for you. Pick the things that work. And that's where you get all the goodness.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like the you read like the 5 a.m. club, and then you're like reading Jeff Bezos gets up at 7 or 8 and then has his sleep. And, you know, he's not doing badly, but again, we're, you know, going for the point, but away from like happiness. But it's like that. It does fit the point of not one size fits all. We're all doing different things, right? I like what you said about making your own soup of ingredients and things like that. And people tell you, oh, you got to do gratitude, you got to do meditation, journaling, and those things can be great, but it's like individual, it's specific to the individual. Someone might like exercise more. I know I personally love exercise, it makes me feel great. But some people could meditate for an hour. Not that many people, but yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, if someone sees me running, they should probably call the police, because I'm being chased, because I would never like be doing exercise. So this is a perfect example of how we have to decide what works for us. So if we have a soup, we have all these ingredients, we get to make the recipe. And the best part is the recipe changes, right? So maybe right now in my recipe, I really need to be doing more random acts of kindness because it's really just, feeding my soul or whatever. And then maybe in 3 months, I'm like, I'm so sick of it. I'm done. Like if it's not working for you and you're not intentional and it's not like you're not getting the feelings out of it, then don't do it. Like that's crazy because then you're not doing it for the right reasons. If you're practicing gratitude because you think it's going to make you happier, but really you want to poke your eyes out, the gratitude isn't working.
Yeah.
Like,
I love that. Yeah. I love that. It's coming, people give guidance on things, but it's always from like where they are and, you got to see if it's right for you. So love that. I wanted to go back on kindness a little bit, like as something. And you said like talking about how much you appreciated someone from a kind act they did for you, which is awesome. Is there something like you do like daily to practice kindness? Is there anything like you found as effective to do kindness, or again, is that a kind of what works for you with kindness? I just want to hear a little bit more about kindness and the power of it.
Yeah, it's definitely what works for you. I love writing note cards. So I write a lot of postcards and they literally sometimes just say like, I was just thinking about you and I think you're great. Or you could do a text message to a friend, or you could do a voice memo to 3 people a day. That's like, hey, just wanted to know I was thinking about you. Or you can, really go out of your way and tell someone that you appreciate them because of whatever they've done for you. Or you can smile at the person serving you the coffee at your favorite coffee shop, or maybe have a quick conversation or compliment them on their new hat that they had wearing that day, or a button on their smock, right? There's all kinds of ways to be kind. And we know that social connection is one of the easiest and best ways to boost happiness. So anytime you have social connection and kindness, really you win. And I think, you talk a lot about self-confidence in your podcast and like all of the work that you do, right? And so I can see how an argument that self-confidence comes from within and you build it and then you go out and you are more confident.
Well,
I'm sorry.
It's and it's always about like the people you're around making impact on that as well, because obviously you've got that level. I always think of it like you got that internal sense, but there's also like if you're around a constant like people or unhappy environment, it's not going to last. Whilst if you're around a uplifting environment, then it's more likely to filter into you.
That's exactly what I was just going to say. I think that self-confidence comes from people breathing that confidence and that life into you. So when you have friends around you, right? Birds of a feather flock together. It's a saying that we say over here. It's like the same type of people. You have, uplifting, happy people. You're surrounding yourself with the right community, and they're all saying, Johnny, you're great. Johnny, your podcast is going to be a #1. Johnny, we're so excited about the stuff that you're doing. Or Johnny, I love your new haircut. Like all of that stuff. If people are breathing that life into you, you can't help but be more confident. And then you can't help but step out in a different way. And what happens, because this is all contagious, this is all part of kindness, right? You say nice things to people. They go out and say nice things to other people in their community. You have this bubble, you have this ripple effect. That self-confidence grows, that kindness grows, that happiness grows. You can't help it. Like it's just the way that our brains are wired. We don't get tons of compliments and then go kick our dog when we get home from work. That's just not how it works. We're happy.
No.
We have this we have a chemical reaction to words of affirmation. And if they're genuine and they're, and they're meaningful and they're intentional, right? Confidence can absolutely grow when you have a, tribe around you breathing some life into you. And that's one of my most favorite things to do, is to compliment and like breathe life, I call it, like into other people, to be like, you did a great job here, this was really amazing. And I mean it in full sincerity.
So like both ways you like to do it, to experience it. So like you've got people who are supporting you and you're supporting them.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Of course. I mean, I love to have a group of people that are like, go after it, Katie, you got this, like climb that hill or whatever. I probably need more people to tell me to go out and exercise. You may need a new group for that. But, you know, like all of those fun things, of course. Because it's, who wants to go to a dinner party with a bunch of people that are saying how miserable they are, how hard life is, or whatever. Now, there are seasons, right? We talked about that. But there's also just, we all know who those people are that kind of bring you down, the kind of like energy vampires.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of my teachers I learned from in the personal growth space, he said, you know, we'll adapt to the environment we're put in, and we're taking in stuff. And I thought that was a really powerful statement that really stuck with me. And I've tried to be as conscious as possible. Now and then I'm with the family, and there might be not so positive talk, even no, they're generally great people, and might be watching the news or whatever, and I'm like leaving the room. But it's like when you're around, like when I've been like in a networking event, for example, I flew over to Vegas, you just like, everyone's like excited, they're all on the same mission, you're just all like, you feel good. And I remember it being one of my happiest days in 2022, because you're just around those kind of people that you resonate with, and you're like, the environment's making you feel good. And yeah, I've even been in places when been in the work environment, and perhaps I got in my own head and I wasn't in a good place, maybe if like at that point, and then had these people who are uplifting, maybe like having a laugh, and they're actually quite good, happy people, and then actually notice that my state starts to change. So yeah, totally love your point about, yeah, you can do some internal work, but ultimately you've got this outside source as well that you're always adapting to.
Yeah, which is so fun, and it's within your control. Most of that is within your control. And there are people in your life that may be energy vampires or may not be like the perfect person to uplift you. And what I have been doing in my own personal life, I'll share it with you. I don't know if this is really gonna, hopefully it resonates with someone. I've just been saying to myself, lead with love. We are not going to agree. Mostly it's on politics, because we're over here in the US, it's a dumpster fire. But it could be other things too. And we're not going to agree. I'm not going to change their mind. They're not going to change my mind. So instead, lead with love. I love this person. They're not leaving my life. Lead with love. And that has really helped my mental state when I have to be with people that are maybe a little bit more triggering.
That's good. Yeah. Leading with love, for your sake or for the listeners' sake. Yeah.
It has nothing to do with them. They don't even know or care.
Yeah.
It's all for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Or the end. Yeah. Yeah. That absolutely makes sense. Okay. No, that's great. Like for the one kind of like a couple more questions really. For the individual who's perhaps a little bit stuck about what makes them happy, what is it that's going to be in my ingredients in my soup? I'm not actually sure. Maybe they've been so in the cycle of routine, autopilot mode, going perhaps into a job they don't like, or perhaps going into in a relationship they don't like. How can they begin to start, like, is it about experimenting with things and trying things, or would you say like it's a case of they just find some time to sit themselves and know what makes them happy? Is there a good approach on that, for the individual who's really stuck but wants to be bring more happiness into their life?
Yeah, I think it's definitely getting clear on what you want. And what I found is you think you can just sit for 30 minutes even and like think about that, but it often is a process, and it takes a little longer, and it's a longer process. If someone is really, really stuck and just can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, then I 100% would suggest some sort of like mental health role of some sort for that person. But if you're just like having a bad day, or just you're stuck in like a week, or it's like a grind, then I would, encourage that person. If we were like sitting on the sofa together, chatting, and you were one of my girlfriends or guy friends, I would encourage them to try to sit in their feelings and then see what it looks like on the other side. Like, we all have feelings. Like, I have negative feelings all the time. Like, we are complex humans. We all have wide ranges of feelings. If I was just happy, that'd be crazy and very weird. Like, that would never be real. So I think that there's an opportunity to just sit in your feelings, be like, we're going to go through this. It might feel like quicksand for a while, might feel like some sludge, but we're going to try to go through it. And then, ask yourself, how can we, what is this teaching us? Or how can we see the light at the end of the tunnel? Is there anything that we can look forward to? But everybody is different. It's so hard, to have a blanket, like, this is going to help, because you have to be in it. What do you think?
Awesome.
How do you like, what would you think? Like,
I personally agree with kind of the process way. Like, I find that's effective for me. From my own personal view, I've always found it quite important, or whoever I've worked with in the past, like, to find, keep asking yourself that question. There may be different ways of getting to it, but understanding what you want is, my view, like, personally, a high priority. And one of the things I did personally that helps me when there's a little bit of clarity or needed, or I'm a bit stuck, or what do I want right now? And that happens in life, right? You're talking about at different stages, we got different ingredients in that soup. For me, I find sometimes just going for a walk and asking those questions, and it's an ongoing process, like you said as well. So again, like, finding what works for you, but yeah, it's we're not going to be happy all the time, but focusing on that, trying to find that vision or what you want. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. So thank you so much, Katie, today. Really, really enjoyed what you shared. You got a great mission, and you're helping a lot of people out there. So thank you for that as well. Just before we wrap up, are there any final points you want to share today, and where can people find you?
Well, it's very easy. You can find me on my website, which is Katie Jefcoat. My name is spelled Jefcoat, KatieJefcoat.com. I mentioned the blog. I will put a hyperlink. I'll send Johnny a hyperlink right to it. But there's always really great content. I have an email newsletter that I do twice a month, because let's be honest, nobody really likes a lot of email. So I have that, and I share more insights on the blog, and I'm obsessed with my 2-minute or 3-minute a day micro podcast, and it's everywhere that you can find podcasts. It's called Everyday Happiness, Finding Harmony and Bliss. It's also on Amazon Alexa, and social media is where everybody's at. So just start the search and you'll find me.
Awesome. All right, we'll be sure to put all that in the show notes as well. So a big thank you once again, Katie, for coming on today.
Thanks. Take care.
Awesome. So that concludes our episode for today. And remember, work on your self-confidence every single day.